my name is Kat, and today I'm going to be doing my top 13 books of 2013. So this has been a very difficult list for me to compile. I've read 93 books so far this year, so I had plenty to choose from, but maybe too much to choose from, because I had a really great reading year. I didn't read any terrible books this year. Like, most of the books that I read I really enjoyed, and only a small handful were kind of meh, mediocre. But yeah, most of them were contenders for this list. However, I had to narrow it down. So I have my list of my favorite books and series that I read this year. Not necessarily new books of this year, just new to me. Some are older, but I just finally got around to reading them and I loved them, so you'll see them on this list. Now, I'm not counting rereads on this list, and I decided that an author could only appear on this list once, so if there were multiple books from that author that I loved, I had to narrow it down to my ultimate favorite. And finally, this list is not in order of favorites. It's in chronological kind of order. I'm gonna start with my favorites that I read earlier in the year and move through time and space to my more recent reads. Okay, let's do this. So first up, I have The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. I read this almost a year ago, back in January, and oh my goodness, I just loved it. I also loved the sequel, Never Fade, but of the two books, I preferred The Darkest Minds, although I did love both of them. It was close, but The Darkest Minds was it was so good. If you like dystopian and paranormal and you haven't started this series yet, then you really need to get on that. What are you waiting for? The third book, so you can marathon it, understandable, but seriously, get to it soon. You're missing out. Next up, I have Scarlet by Marissa Meyer, and this is the sequel to Cinder, which I also read this year, but I liked Scarlet a little bit more, so that's like my one pick. But both of them are excellent, and you obviously have to read this one before you read this one, so read this one, and then this one, and then get super excited for Cress coming out in February. The third book, it's like one of my most anticipated books of next year. So far the series is just amazing, and if the second half is as good as the first half, then I can definitely see this series getting a permanent spot on my favorites list. For sure. Next up, I have Prodigy by Marie Lu, and this is the second book in the Legend trilogy, another sequel that I liked a little bit better than the first one, though I loved the first one too. Are you noticing a pattern? I love all the books, I love them all. Champion 2, the finale, I also really loved, though not quite as much as these two, but still very good, great series. Overall, highly recommended if you're into dystopian. Next up, I have Ruby Red by Kirsten Gear, the first book in the Ruby Red trilogy. Once again, I also love the other books in this trilogy, Sapphire Blue and Emerald Green, but I gotta say, Ruby Red was my favorite of the bunch, but all of them are good. All of them are good. All of the books I talk about in this video are good, and I recommend them. If you're looking for recommendations, you've come to the right place. Get this, get these, get all the other books on my shelves, and you're set. Next up, I have Clockwork Princess by Cassandra Clare. This is the third and final book of the Infernal Devices trilogy, and this book is amazing. The first two books, Clockwork Angel and Clockwork Prince, are also fantastic, but oh my goodness, everything just comes together so beautifully in this book. It's a wonderful, satisfying conclusion to the trilogy, and there's William Herondale. I mean, he's in all the books, but this book was just so good that it's making me talk like a robot who loves books. And I love this one, so process that. Next up, I have Shadow Kiss by Richelle Mead, and this is the third book of the Vampire Academy series, which is not a new series, but I just finally got to it this year, and I loved it. But I think this one is my favorite because it oh, it was like the big grand kickoff of the goodness of the rest of the series. And I mean, books 1 and 2 are still good. Before reading the series, I had a lot of people tell me like, just get through the first 2 books because the series gets so much better. And I read the first book and I loved it, and I was like, it gets better? Bitchin'! But yeah, I love this entire series, and I would totally recommend the entire series, and I need to get started on Bloodlines already, because I think I'm going through Adrian withdrawals, and that's not healthy. Next up, I have Ready Player One by Ernest Cline, and this is an adult standalone novel. I love this book so very much. The world is amazing, and the story is so cool and well plotted, and great characters, great dialogue, funny, action. It has all the things. If I had to narrow this list down to a top 3, this would be on it. Yes, it would. Next up, I have The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater, and this is book 1 of the Raven Cycle Quartet, although I haven't read any of the other books, just this one. But I loved this one a whole lot. It did take me a little bit to get into it because there's a lot of characters and you kind of have to settle into this book, but once you get settled in, it is amazing. The world is so cool, and the storyline, oh, the writing, I just feel like this series is going somewhere epic, and I can't wait to jump on and ride along the epic train. You guys probably know by now that I read a lot of young adult fantasy, and I can honestly say that this book is unlike just about everything else out there. It has such a unique kind of flavor to it. So if you're tired of the typical paranormal dystopian kind of book, you need to read this because it's what you're missing in your life. I'm telling you, you need this book. You need it in your life. Now. Right now. Oh, it's coming! It's coming! You have no choice! It's up in your grill! Next up, I have Origin by Jennifer L. Armentrout, and this is the 4th book of the Lux series. This is another series where I just love each and every book in it, but in this case, I feel like the series gets better as it goes on, and it starts out great, so don't worry about that, but each new book builds upon the last, and this one, the most recent one, was so very good, and I am so looking forward to book 5 coming out next August, the final book. Oh my goodness, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? Next up, I have The House of Hades by Rick Riordan. This is book 4 in the Heroes of Olympus series, and oh my gosh, I loved this book. If I had to choose a number 1 of the year, it would be this book. Although it was actually kind of tough to choose which Rick Riordan book I would include in this video, because not only did I read the entire Heroes of Olympus series so far, but I also read the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series. So lots of Percy to choose from, but this one was my favorite. However, you have to read all of the previous books leading up to this one before you can get to this one, so get on that already! Next up, I have Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell, and oh my goodness, this is one of the cutest, most heartwarming contemporary stories I've ever read. I did also enjoy Rainbow Rowell's other book that came out this year, Eleanor and Park, but Fangirl just, oh, it touched my little fangirl heart, and I loved it. And I am just super excited to read whatever she writes next, and also her previous adult book, Attachments, that I haven't read yet. I want to read that too. Just anything Rainbow Rowell writes, I'm pretty sure I want to read it. Next up, I have Vicious by Ve Schwab, and this is an adult standalone fantasy novel. Now, I also read Victoria Schwab's young adult book, The Archived, earlier this year, and I absolutely loved that, but this one, I think I loved this one more. Maybe because I read it more recently, but also because ooh, the world is just so cool, and this story has kind of a darker edge to it. And I've said this before, but I just really love Victoria Schwab's writing style. It's so atmospheric and just, ooh, it really pulls you into whatever book it is that you're reading, be it this one or her young adult books, and they're all good, but this one especially so. I loved it, especially if you're looking for a standalone fantasy, not a love story, no love angst, no love triangles. It's just a good, entertaining, kind of dark and twisted story, and yeah, I recommend it. And finally, closing out my top 13 of 2013 list, I have The Coldest Girl in Coldtown by Holly Black. I feel like I've talked about this book a lot lately, but it's only because it is so very good. This book is one of the best standalones I've ever read, one of the best vampire books I've ever read, and just all of the good things. Sometimes with standalones, world development, character development can kind of get pushed aside for the plot. Not so in this case. This is a really well-rounded book and just so very good. Alright, that is it. Those are my top 13 books of 2013, and that is everything for this video today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a great night, and I will have another vlog up soon, so I will see you then. Goodbye! I just rearranged my shelves. I have no idea where anything is. The darkest minds. Oh my god, I have to stand up to get to it. This is a terrible shelf arrangement. Oh, my lighting's gonna get funky in a minute. Not in the good, like, funky, groovy kind of way, but in the what's going on with that kind of way. What's next? The House of Hades, of course. Of course it's the House of Hades. What other house would it be? Oh my god, these are in the wrong order. Don't look at it. How does this go? I'm glad you couldn't see that before from the current angle.